Wow, I love watching the epic story of the Bad Batch continue. Okay, guys, time to be real with you. I was not excited for Star Wars The Bad Batch. I mean, why would I be? It's a spin-off show about a group of characters that got 4 episodes of one season of a 7-season show, and personally I wasn't really into them as characters in the 4 episodes that got in Clone Wars Season 7. I knew they could carry a show, but I didn't think the content of the show would be very good, because by the nature of The Bad Batch, there's really only one thing you can do with them. Have them leave the Empire and be mercenaries while bringing in that Clone Wars nostalgia. You know what? It's exactly what happened, and I blame the disgruntled Clone Wars fanboys who hated the sequels for reasons and couldn't stop screaming on Twitter. This caused Disney to freak out and beg Dave Filoni to make more Clone Wars content, which he did, and it was pretty good, not gonna lie. And fans would not shut up about it. The onslaught of people on the internet screaming about how Revenge of the Sith is the best Star Wars movie, and Clone Wars is an infallible piece of media, even though in my opinion at least neither of those things are true. But oh boy did those fanboys scream the loudest, because Disney now wants to appease them and they commissioned Filoni to help them. And Filoni, in his infinite wisdom, even though he also made the worst piece of Star Wars media ever created, resistance, created the Bad Batch, which basically amounts to Clone Wars Season 8. Are ya happy, a-holes? Are ya happy with this mediocre continuation of the Clone Wars that doesn't live up to the potential of its own concepts? Ya happy? Alright, let's take a step back. After all, let's be honest, nobody really cares about my disgust with the current state of the Star Wars fandom. People are only really here to know what I thought of the Bad Batch, so let's get into that. Starting off with the things I actually like, I actually think the animation is excellent. The landscapes look incredibly beautiful, and it looks like they used RTX 3090s to render out the lighting in this show because it's absolutely incredible. I paused the first episode to just stare at the beautiful snowy forest as it hit me that the Clone Wars animators have actually become just as good as their counterparts over at Pixar and Disney Animation proper. Speaking of which, the voice acting is also pretty good here. D. Bradley Baker does a good job of giving everyone in the Bad Batch a distinct voice, and it helps them develop their own personalities, and the rest of the voice cast ain't too shabby either. And credit where credit is due, the dialogue isn't that bad either. This is because they're using a style of dialogue in which the dialogue is only used to advance the plot or character development, and this means there isn't that much of an opportunity for bad banter because there isn't that much banter in general. It expands on the culture of the clones and how the Empire slowly eroded it for its own purposes, and everything focusing on that is actually really good. In order to get to the real problems with the Bad Batch, we need to get into spoilers, so if you want to avoid these, you can just skip to the next chapter-y thing. I don't know what YouTube's doing these days. They're kind of strange. So this show starts with a 75-minute pilot that shows us the Bad Batch's reaction to Order 66, as well as all the other clones, and surprisingly, I actually kind of like this episode. I honestly think that this one episode would have made for a really good animated Star Wars film, and that's kind of what I wish they did. Also, I think the idea of Crosshair being the main antagonist is a good way to spice up who can be a bad guy in a world run by the Empire. Traditionally, we just leave it to the Inquisitors and Grand Admirals, but no, ordinary people can be bad guys too. The problem with the show is that it's 16 friggin' episodes long. Now, some people, particularly anime fans, like to say that seasons should be long so you get more content out of them. And I completely disagree. That's stupid, because that only works if your story can be spread out across all of the episodes of your show. If not, then you have to pull content right out of your ass to fill those episodes. This is called filler, and this is what they did to Bad Batch. Episodes 2 through 7 all have nothing to do with the actually engaging storyline. It's all filler. In addition, in these episodes, we also get reintroduced to characters from the Clone Wars, but not like the characters people actually liked or cared about, like Anakin or Ahsoka, but people like the clone deserter, whose name I don't even remember. That's how little I care about him as a character. And all this built into episode 6. In my opinion, the worst episode of the show, and one of the worst episodes in any Star Wars TV show in general. Not only does it have no bearing on the rest of the story, aside from introducing Rex in episode 7, which did not need to be set up at all. Could have just introduced him in episode 7 like you were doing for all the other characters. But we also get reintroduced to...
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
Who wanted to see the Martez sisters again? The most annoying characters ever to be invented by Filoni are put in the Bad Batch for reasons. The episode doesn't really add that much to the characterization of the Bad Batch. The action isn't really that impressive, and the only other thing it does is set up Wrecker's inhibitor chip, even though they've been setting it up for the past 3 episodes. You coulda cut this episode out, and it wouldn't make any difference to the overall structure of the show. But after that episode, we actually get some good stuff. We get an episode in which the Bad Batch go with Rex, a character who we actually care about, Tabraka, a planet we actually care about, because, you know, Jedi Fallen Order and all that, to get their inhibitor chips removed, growing Wrecker and Omega's relationship, and setting up that the inhibitor chip may actually be resistible, followed by episode 8, which is just a big action sequence, but a fun one at that. After a competent filler episode to rescue Omega from Cad Bane, we get a couple of episodes focusing on Hera, which are a nice way to set up Rebels' most interesting plot lines, and after a couple of forgettable filler episodes, we reach the finale. Now, the aforementioned fanboys want me to give this finale an unbridled praise for the way it ties up the clone story, and there's no way anyone could complain about it. With that said, I'm gonna complain about it. Okay, to Filoni's credit, episode 15 is pretty friggin' great. With a lot of neat character moments, I think the idea of Crosshair removing his inhibitor chip is genius. First of all, it shows how the Empire isn't just all fear and money. There are people who actually are loyal to it, expanding on the idea that the Mandalorian began to explore. The idea of the Imperial culture, it's there. Second, it makes the conflict of Crosshair being left behind punch harder because it's Crosshair believing that, not a ploy by the Empire. And I also think the end of the episode is perfect. The shot composition, lighting, and music come together to make the audience, including me, feel a sense of end to Kamino. I can't believe someone was able to make me feel for Kamino of all places. Although, while most people were weeping over it, I was going like, yes! That's how I feel! This is Filoni planting himself like a tree and saying, no, the Clone Wars are over, we're done. And I, for one, am so happy about this decision because it means we could finally see something new from the Star Wars universe. This episode is great, but then we have a whole other episode to go. Episode 16 is not poorly done. The animation and action are good. There's a real sense of urgency, but it doesn't really add to the themes of the character development of the show. It's just another filler episode to get the Bad Batch out, which they didn't need to do. Why go out like this? Why not just have Rex, a Reg, fly in and save them? Hell, honestly, it would be more impactful as we can see what a Reg thinks about the end of his home. Why end on a filler episode with a lackluster conclusive wait? Why not end on a high note? And that was the Bad Batch. Is it good? No. I think the filler and annoying characters as well as the idea are flawed overall. I still don't think the next Star Wars animated show should have been a continuation of the Clone Wars. With that said, that isn't all the show is, thank God. I do think its additions to the lore of the Empire and central cast are solid. I just wish it had been a 9-episode show instead of a 16-episode one. Overall, I don't really know how to feel about it. I think the season overall has equal good and equal bad. I do think season 2 will probably be better than the first one, and I will probably force myself to watch it. But I, for one, am way more excited for some of the other shows that are going to be coming out soon. Alright, so now, number rating. And since the show is equal parts good and bad, I'm going to give it a score that is also equal parts good and bad, which means Bad Batch Season 1 gets a 5 out of 10.